Welcome. My name is Karen Clifton, and I'm the Executive Coordinator of the Catholic Prison Ministries Coalition. And I have the privilege of hosting this webinar today with Joyce Dixson-Haskett. And as we begin, let's take a moment to settle ourselves and open with prayer. Good and gracious God, we ask you to teach us how to walk and be present to the vulnerable. Open our ears to hear your call to be your presence, and open our eyes to ways in which we are blind to our own complicity to systems of violence. Help us to have courage to speak out and be advocates for peace, safe environments for all, access to resources, dignity for all life, and the ability to thrive. We ask you to bless this time together. Joyce Dixon-Haskett's ministry and the ministry of all of those on this call. And we ask this through your son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Wow, Joyce Dixon-Haskett has a powerful story as a trafficked and incarcerated, formerly incarcerated person. We're so blessed to have this time with you, and we need more than one webinar to capture all of your wisdom and all of your many, many gifts. So thank you for spending time with us today. Joyce is a front runner in the advocacy for children of incarcerated parents. Her clinical model, Levels of Response to Traumatic Events, LORT, that she'll be speaking about, is described as the most sensible approach in assisting children with incarcerated parents. She has a master's degree in social work from the University of Michigan, and she has made a recent COVID move, and she is now living north of Houston, Texas. So Joyce, welcome. We're going to turn it over to you, and for those of you that are on the call, know that please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll be picking them up and feeding them to Joyce after she gives her the initial piece of her presentation. Thank you, Joyce, your gift.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, and thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. Before I get going, I want everybody who's a part of this webinar to just be with me right now while I acknowledge Sister Susan Van Balen, because I love this woman so much, and she is such a big part of why I am here today. Gosh, I'm getting emotional already. This usually doesn't happen. But in your prayer, you were talking about being advocates for peace. And Sister Sue was not only an advocate for peace, but she was a warrior. She was a warrior in that place. And she never allowed staff or administration or the big people to keep her away from us. She believed that in order for there to be positive change, that there had to be, you had to touch and feel, and people had to know that you cared about them. And she did that. She loved on me, and she touched me, and she yelled at me, and she instructed me, and then she prayed for me, and she wouldn't let me feel sorry for myself. And oh God, I thank God for her. So, and I know she's on this call, and I just want to let you know, Sister Sue, and everybody who's listening, that your work was not in vain. And I am a product of what you have instilled in me. And so I just thank you guys for listening to that, because it's true. And I'm going to say this, and sometimes it is, of course, the event is a terrible thing. However, when you are left alone with the feelings that you have after those kinds of things happen to you. You just wander through your life trying to find answers to all those questions that you have about who you are, what's the matter with you, why do these things happen to you, why don't people care about me, all these kinds of things, and one thing leads to another. Here I am now, very promiscuous, pregnant with my first kid at 16, pregnant with my second one at 18, two different fathers. I had jobs, I tried to work, I tried to be a good girl, but it didn't work for me. I already had the reputation. People had already decided that I was a castaway before I even understood what that meant. After I was raped at 7, any healthy level of self-esteem was destroyed for me before it was ever able to be developed. You're just a target. So 19, 20, here comes this guy, Mr. Right, okay? He tells me how wonderful I am. He tells me I'm beautiful. He tells me he loves me. Buys me designer shoes, designer clothes, makes friends with my mother and grandmother, buys them liquor and gives them money, makes them so happy they love him, because that's what happens. They separate you from your support system. All right, next thing you know, appointments are being made for me in hotel rooms. I don't have a clue about what's going on. First the beatings, now the appointments in the hotel rooms. Now I'm being sold for sex. And I'm even more confused now, because how could this man who say he loved me now sell me for sex? So there are the beatings. One group of people, they almost killed me. They almost killed me. And I'm going through this really fast. So I'm in the hospital. The human trafficking is not about sex. It's about money, power, control, and manipulation. And so I'm the entertainment at a party. And they strip me naked, stand me in a bed, and beat me with pool sticks. The wager is how many licks I can take before I go down. He finally breaks the stick over my head. I think it's over. He just calls for another stick. He starts to beat me with that one, and I go down. And I remembered praying, God, please don't let someone read to my children that they found their mother naked, dead, face down in a ditch. This guy says I can't kill her. He was told to kill me because if he took me to the hospital, they were going to ask too many questions. He said, but I can't kill her. So they wrap me up in a sheet like a mummy, drive me to a hospital in Detroit, throw me on the back dock like a bag of garbage. But it's okay, because I'm alive. I stayed there for about 3 hours. A maintenance man found me, took me into the hospital. One person asked me one time what happened to me. When I didn't tell, nobody asked again. I was in that hospital for 13 days, and when they released me to my perpetrator. I knew then that if he didn't kill me, somebody in the streets was going to kill me. And so I decided my only way out was to kill him, because people had already decided that I wasn't worth helping. Unfortunately, you can get a gun anywhere in the streets. I found one, took it back to the house, hid it in an upstairs bathroom he did use, came downstairs, found my opportunity, stood up, and I shot him. Scared to death, but I shot him. And then I thought something was wrong with me because I stood there and I watched him die. But instead, I just felt safe. Didn't know anything about the law. I'd never been in trouble. Left town, was gone 2 weeks, came back home. I had 2 sons. They were 8 and 6 years old. And the most stupid question people can ask you is, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just leave? Because I think the coercion is the most dangerous part of the 3 elements of human trafficking, which are force, fraud, and coercion. Because while my mother and grandmother, while my support system was on one side of town talking about how much they love him, he was on the other side of town saying things to me like, you want to leave? Go ahead and leave. I'm trying to watch my language here. Go ahead and leave, but you'll come to your mama's funeral. Go ahead and leave, and I'll have those two bastards of yours turned out in a week. Talking about my two sons. Now, when somebody like this makes these kinds of threats, someone you know can carry them out without remorse, that's the kind of thing that'll make you stay. I shoot him, come back, call the police, turn myself in, go to jail. And the first night I went to jail was the best sleep I had had, and I don't know when. My trial lasted a day and a half. I didn't know anything about the law, had a bench trial, which was crazy. But when it was over, the judge had found me guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced me to spend the rest of my natural life in prison. I'm hurt and I'm conflicted. I'm hurt because, one, they made me look like the cold-blooded killer and he was the innocent victim. Two, I wasn't a murderer, but I murdered. I wasn't a killer, but I killed. And it was premeditated because I did think about it, but I thought about it because I wanted to live. So I go to prison. Now everybody, oh, my baby, going to prison. Yes, I went to prison for life. The judge said, you have mandatory life. You will die in prison. You have life without the possibility of parole. So I'm in prison now. And I went to the, oldie Hoko. There was nothing for women, nothing. No education, no way to take care of yourself, just absolutely nothing. And I decided that I was going to learn how to do what I could to help women in prison and their children, because I had nobody to help me. There was nothing going on in prison. However, the church people did come in. Probably the most underrated ministry in the church, the prison ministry. They would come and they would talk to you and they would encourage you. I was in every Michigan women's prison there was. I finally run into Susan and women were fighting and women were struggling and we were trying to have the same rights as men. And I was hanging out with these three amazing women. One was Mary Glover, and then the other one was named Susan Fair. And these amazing attorneys from the University of Michigan came in, and the women fought to have equal rights in prison. Well, after about 12 years, we finally won. And the three of us, Susan, Mary, and I, were selected to be a part of a pilot program from the University of Michigan. And all three of us graduated, all three of us made it, but I'm just so happy to say that I was the first one to get through it. Go blue, no haters, right? So, and I'm going to tell you this and get to my ministry. And so I did everything you can do in prison. I did it all, because prison is about survival and adaptation. It was people like, the prison ministry who came in, who would spark that little hope, but after they were gone, you went back to the routine. How am I going to make it the next day? I had done 17 years. And I was so tired. One day the prison ministry came in. This little old Black lady, she was 85 years old. She had earned the right to say whatever she wanted to say, right? And so she called me over to her and she said, "Gal, how much time are you doing?" And in my good girl voice, I said, "Ma'am." She said, "How much time are you doing?" Because I'm thinking, I don't want to talk about this. But I said, "I'm doing natural life." That woman looked at me and she said, "As long as you have breath in your body." She said, you have hope, and your hope is in Jesus. Oh, Lord. There was that Jesus name again. But it wasn't what she said. It was the way she said it. She said it with power and authority, like she knew what she was talking about. And like I was when I was 7 at that carnival, I left the church service and went back to my face, and I fell down on my face I went back to my prison cell, and I fell down on my face. And I laid there and I cried in my snot and my tears. And I said, God, if I die in this prison, it's okay if you just save me. Because I had nothing left, nothing. I didn't know how I was going to make another day. God, take my life right now, because I don't know how I'm going to do this. And as I laid there on that floor, I heard the judge's voice in my ears saying that you will die in this prison. I want you all to know that he was right, because the old Joyce laid there and died, and a new Joyce in Christ Jesus got up. I got up off that floor, and I didn't know any more than I did when I went down, but I knew I was going to make it. And I'm flying through this. Excuse me. But that's where my life started for me. I got up off that floor, a new creature, totally submitted in Christ. I said, okay, God, I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't have to do anything. I just went with God. Next thing you knew, everything I needed to try to get back to court was there. I got back to court, making a long story really, really short. I got back to court after doing 17 years, 120 days. And the judge said to me, they reduced my sentence from first-degree murder to second-degree murder. And the 17 years that I had done, they granted as good time, and I walked out of the courtroom. I just walked out of the courtroom. Free woman, because he whom the Son sets free is free indeed. No parole, no halfway house, none of that stuff. And so the people from the University of Michigan said, if this woman walks out of the courtroom, we will have her in the master's degree program on campus in Ann Arbor in 6 weeks. And they did just that. I went through an accelerated program, got my master's degree, and I went to work. And I went to work for an organization that worked with kids, young adults. And excuse me. And what I found out was that there was a difference in the way one set of young people acted versus another set, same set of circumstances. They were all in for having, been adjudicated, and they were trying to keep them from going to prison. But what I discovered was that one set of kids who seemed to be much more serious were children of parents who were in prison. And they handled their situations differently. They had more experiences. And then I found out that a lot of these kids had to be mothers. I found out a lot of these kids had to take care of their siblings. I found out a lot of these kids learned how to rig the electricity and gas to keep the power on because their parents were locked up. I learned that these kids did more because they didn't want the system involved, because they knew if the system was involved, that they were going to take their siblings. And the organization that I worked for basically said, hey, this is all we can do for this group of kids, and that I decided that I was going to do something else. So what I decided was this: well, with as much time as I am spending trying to convince this organization that the needs of children of prisoners is different in a lot of ways from these other kids who've never had these experiences, if I'm going to spend this much time trying to convince them, I might as well create my own program. And so I did. I started Sons and Daughters of the Incarcerated. And so I started to work with these children, and I created a model I created the LORT model, levels of response to traumatic events, because I learned that there are different levels and there are different responses to different kinds of events. And so I took the model and I created a program. The program is called LORT, just the LORT program. And so I was doing a workshop in Nashville, and the director of programming for the Department of Corrections in Rhode Island was there. And he said to me, "This is a cutting edge program." And he says, "I want to be a part of this." And now I had tried to institute the program in Michigan, but because I was an ex-felon from Michigan, the women's prison wouldn't let me in. And so this guy says, "We want this program." And so we got together, and the program that I had created for children of prisoners, all we did was modify the content to make it work so that the fathers who were incarcerated could work with this program in conjunction with their children who were on the outside. And so we created the program, and my goodness, they said that it was the first program that they ever had in the prison where there was always a waiting list. These guys were always waiting to get into this program, because now they were working the program with their children, but now they were learning how their children felt about their actions. There's something about, even when my children would come and visit me in prison, there is something about facing your child in prison makes you understand that you are now staring accountability in the face. My children, which is the reason that LORT came about, we'll talk about it. And I'm going through this so fast. While I was incarcerated, my children were ostracized from the neighborhood. They were ostracized from the community they grew up in. People they lived next door to for years, all of a sudden didn't want to have anything to do with them because they now had a mother who was in prison. My children were stigmatized because of the crime I committed. That's really how this thing came to be. Excuse me. And so my children stayed with my mother, the same environment that I grew up in. My children also grew up in. And at 12 years old, my oldest son, he's out there selling weed. They've got him selling marijuana. Now, one of the reasons he's out there selling marijuana was because my mother always complained about not having enough to do this with and not having enough to take care of them with. They are feeling guilty because they are left with a grandmother who has to take care of them because their mother isn't there. Now, that's not the real reason he's doing it. He's doing it because he's angry. He is pissed off. He is hurt because, just like I said earlier, it was bad enough that I was in prison. Yes, that was the event. But what happened was my children were left with the feelings of me being locked up by themselves to try and figure out. They didn't talk to my kids about my incarceration. They said what they always say to kids. You don't need to know anything about this. You'll be okay. They weren't okay. And there was nobody to help them. And so at 18, my son is out there in the streets selling drugs. But here's where the problem started. They're children. They're going to school. They're in elementary school. They're 6 and 8 years old. My oldest son is fighting every single day because kids are coming to school talking about his mother who's locked up, his mother who's a criminal, his mother who's a killer, his mother who's a jailbird. He fought. Every single day he fought. He did what he thought he was supposed to do. He protected his little brother. He fought. Now, he's angry. He's fighting. How did my youngest son handle it? You know what he did? He detached. He learned how to detach at an early age from anybody else who could hurt him. While my oldest son was out there fighting, my youngest son was at home in his room, okay? Secluded. You know, he did his studies, but he didn't want to be bothered with anybody. You know, he built his own barriers. He built his own walls. He learned early how to keep other people out. They grew up with these feelings. You know, even our babies. We all know that babies function in the concrete. That's how they function. What they can see, what they can feel, what they can touch, what they hear. But they don't know anything about the abstract. Even we as adults spend more time in the concrete than we do in the abstract, which is why people come to see people like me, because I understand how important going into the abstract is. Now, even though my kids grew up angry and all these other things, and their behavior was reflecting what they were feeling, nobody was dealing with the feelings. So I created this model that would address all these areas for children from the start of a parent, from the start of a parent who goes to prison to what happens, or how these kids get to intergenerational incarceration. And so, I developed this model, and the model was very successful, and created the program, and the program is still running today. The program has been running in Rhode Island for 12, 13 years, still having the same effect. And there was so much going on over there. And then I started doing all this other work in human trafficking, although my heart was always with children of prisoners. Our prison systems are just as full now as they were before. And now I'm in Texas. You know, I'm in a death penalty state. I'm worried about women who are on death row. I'm worried about women who are on death row, who are there because of a crime they committed to a man, for a man, or because of a man. Now I'm concerned about these women who are on death row for these reasons, and those who have children. You know, somebody told me, they said, you know, you can set Michigan inside of Houston twice. I'm like, what? But I'm like, what am I doing here? And so, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I don't even know where this is going to go. I just know that when I got here, and I have a very thriving practice in Michigan, and my idea was, you know how we get when we tell God what we're going to do, right? I'm going to go to Houston. I'm going to go to Texas. I'm going to set up, because my practice is Daylily Health in Michigan. I'm going to go to Houston, and I'm going to set up Daylily Health Houston. And I get here, nothing's going on. And it's not that I can't make it happen. It's just that I've had to just sit still. Just wait to see what God was going to do. And so, you know, I've said so much. I've been all over the place. I hope people were able to keep up with me. But at this point, you know,
Can you get into give some of the backbone of the LORD program?
Oh, you know what I did? Okay. I am, where's Kara? I took a PowerPoint from one of the Rhode Island girls, and let me see if I can share this. Share screen. Sis Lord. And it's, just a couple of slides, a couple of things I want to share. So I want to get to, this is really what I want to get to. Because even in the book, Lord, I deal with 4 stages. 4 stages. The actual event, which is the actual arrest, and this is the place where concrete changes occur. All right. So, and what I mean by concrete, I mean that there is, okay, the parents now removed from the home. These kids, the schools change, the caregivers change, their quality of life changes. All these are changes that happen on a concrete level. Lord has 4 stages. And so then the next stage is what we call saturation, or the broken heart stage. And all that says is this, that these kids have such a plethora of feelings going on that they cannot reach in, pull one out, put a label on it and say, this is what I'm dealing with. Now, this is just a brief overview of the model, not the model itself. And they can't, they know something's going on, but they can't identify it. And then they're confused and they're depressed all the time, but they don't look depressed. And they won't, if you ask them, something's wrong, and you'll say, what's the matter? They'll say nothing. And you'll say, well, yeah, something's the matter. What's the matter? And then they'll say, I don't know. It's because they don't know. It's because so much, all those feelings are floating around like a kaleidoscope. They just can't grab one and say, this is what's going on, because there's so many. And then the 3rd stage we call blaming, which is really displaced aggression. Now kids are starting to get angry. And kids are starting to understand that what happened to them wasn't their fault. Now they're blaming other people. And what happens here is that these same kids are now moving to a place where they're full of anger and retribution, for lack of a better word. I am angry with you and you owe me something. Somebody owes me something. And then they move to what we call the eruption stage. And that's all that says is that now they are manifesting all these feelings that they've had before. And there's incorrigibility, and they don't want to hear what anybody has to say. And they start to find groups of kids that they identify with. And they find kids who may have also been ostracized from their community. And they start to hang with these kids, and then they have problems there because these are, familiar spirits. But we all know that just because a spirit is familiar doesn't mean it's compatible. And then they have problems within their own groups. And so, what do I have here? And so there are all these critical changes. So, there's they start to show, the low self-esteem, and they're withdrawing from family and friends, and their lives are changing really, really fast. And this is not my PowerPoint, this is somebody else's, but it's cute. They understand that this is not their stuff. And they're carrying the baggage of their parents, which means the stigma of incarceration, the I know you're looking down on me, I'm angry, I'm detached, I'm gonna get you before you get me. I've had children who have even committed crimes just so they can get to prison to see the parent. And so, what did I want to say? Oh, here we go. All right. And so even with the event stage, okay, we talked about that. Now, we talked about the the concrete things that happen. But here now we've got the shattered belief system. Shattered belief system simply says this: everything you taught me about who I was supposed to be able to trust was a lie. You told me if I got into trouble to call the police. Well, the police just kicked the door in, took my mother and my father away, made me get made me get face down on the floor, and I'm scared to death. Now I know I can't trust them. The lawyer who's supposed to be able to help my mother now is the lawyer who's responsible for her going to prison. Everything is different now. We talked about the physical separation. We talked about the detachment issues. We talked about the feelings of abandonment. Now they're blaming the parents. I've been abandoned. I've been neglected. This is somebody's fault. Now I'm labeled, my name is no longer my kid, Vernell and Charles. My name is no longer Charles, but now I'm identified as the child of that woman down the street who killed that man and went to prison. And then there's a judicial system. Okay, how many problems do we have with our kids now who are in foster care, or kids who were in foster care or ran away because they've been abused even more because of the judicial system? It's a mess. And then you go into the saturation stage where these kids are bombarded with all these unexplainable feelings and emotions. Yes, I'm scared. Yes, I'm going through grief. Yes, I'm going through loss. I had people, the ambiguity is ridiculous. I had people who knew I was in prison, all right? They also knew that I was doing a life sentence, and they actually told my children, it would be better for you if you acted as if your mother was dead, because she's never coming home. Now, how ambiguous is that to them? Because now they know that I'm alive because they come and see me, but they know that I'll never be able to be a part of their lives because the judge already said I'm going to die in prison. Who explains this stuff to our children? Nobody. The loneliness, the hurt, the pain, the helplessness, the loss of identity. I'm not who I was. Now I'm this person. The sense of abandonment, humiliation, guilt, responsibility. Now, the dangerous things about this period is this. Even though you grow up chronologically, you get older, your body develops, you get bigger, these feelings stay the same. So now, how do you separate Joyce the adult from Joyce the kid? This is what I mean. You take a kid who grows up watching his father beat his mother. This kid says, I'll never do this when I'm adult. When I get big, I'll never do this. This kid watches his father beat his mother. It hurts him, but he can't do anything about it because he's too little. The fight is too big. He feels too weak. He feels hopeless in this situation. There's nothing he can do about it. And he witnesses this over and over again. Well, that little person moves with him in his adult years. Now, if he doesn't deal with it, if those issues aren't dealt with, then they follow him as an adult. And the same things that his father did to his mother, he finds that he's now doing himself, to his spouse, to his sister, to his mother, because he gets into those situations where things are now overwhelming and the situation feels hopeless to him. He results to these childlike mannerisms and behaviors. So these are things that we have to work on. Oh, I'm going so fast, I'm dizzy. Here is the blaming stage. Okay, now they understand that this is not my fault. They start to move toward open aggression toward other people. They're harboring the anger. They're feeling unjustly treated. Now they're blaming. Everything that's happened to me is somebody else's fault. They feel victimized. I'm tired of people doing all these bad things to me. And they're depressed and they're angry and they're almost always down. They're always complaining about something, always negative, always expecting the worst to happen, because this is their belief system. And it was created. All right. And the last stage we go through is what I call eruption. And all they're doing is manifesting the negative behavior because our behavior is a direct reflection of how we feel. Acting out in school, incorrigibility, no respect for authority, direct result of the arrest. And when these kids witness the arrest, it's even worse. Now they have moved from being a victim to the victimizer. I'm gonna get you before you get me, that mentality. The gang involvement, which is a tool or a means for the vengeance or getting even that they haven't been able to do on their own. Now, even though Lord has 4 stages, the danger isn't going through every stage because they are going to experience those stages. The danger is for the children to have to experience every single step in the stage without the ability to identify what's happening to them or understanding their place in the cycle. So with these kids, their lives change very drastically, very quickly, and the changes happen more quickly than their ability to adjust or adapt. So, all right, this is just, this doesn't take much to figure out. We can't undo what they've witnessed, suffered, or lived through, but we can teach them how to effectively cope with the changes, which is what Susan Van Balen did for me. She taught me how to manage. She helped me manage those feelings. You're going to have those feelings. It's how you manage them that makes the difference. And that's what Lord does. We try to equip our kids with resiliency. And kids are more resilient than adults. All we have to do is take the time and show them how to do it, how to get through it. And that's not a lot. And we all have so much to give. And we can all help in so many different areas. But this was a quick run through of somebody else's PowerPoint who runs the program in Rhode Island based off the information that they get from the book. Woo.
That was amazing. Your story was amazing, and it broke my heart. Brought me to tears. I mean, it's so real. And unfortunately, I wished it was just only you, but it's so many of you, your stories. And I appreciate you taking us through this pattern. And I, you nailed it as far as in the program. There's no question. And so, in your book, is there more next steps as far as really how the intervention is done? Because there's no question. There's got to be. You know what?
All of it is in this little book. This is the book we use. I wrote this book, I don't know, 10 years ago, and it still works today. This is what we use as a program guide with the program in the prison. Each guy that goes through this program with their child uses this book as their tool. This is a guide for them. And it's simply called LORT, Levels of Response to Traumatic Events. Mm-hmm. And, you can get it on Amazon or anywhere. We should, people should get it.
We've got it over in the chat. For sure. And, this is an issue, and what you're bringing up into this group and to why we sought you out is that there is so little out there. There's so little, and we're open for any organizations that are addressing. We need to break the cycle.
And I apologize. I apologize for going through this so fast.
No. But this if you're lifting up the awareness and making us so aware of the need, and because for every person that's in prison, there's so many people by that ripple have been affected. And that's where we need to be. We're called to walk with them along with those that go in to make the transformation within the prisons. So there's just 2 real quick questions before we do a quick commercial thing. And that is, I'm curious, now that it has been years since you were incarcerated, and you're looking at, just as a voice of wisdom for those that are doing ministry on this call. Have you seen, I know you're doing a lot of work with trafficking. Due to the publication and the raising of public awareness, are you seeing some change with all of the campaigns that are being run with trafficking?
Yes. There is a lot being done, but there's also a lot to be done.
Yes.
And I think that in order to really be effective in minimizing the risk for women or children, young men, it's bad for young men because they don't report. We have to attack the demand. We have to start to hold Johns accountable. We do. So there's a lot of work to be done, but even in the terms of my children were products of a mother who was trafficked. There's such a connection here. There's so much to do.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's certain. And then with right now with the need to address guns in this in our society and the effects of it and the access for children.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
and here I am in Texas, and then I'm thinking, oh my goodness. Then you think about all the border towns.
Yeah.
Trafficking has to be huge.
It is in Houston, so isn't
it? There's a lot, but there's a lot to do, but we can do it. We have to do it together, One person does this piece, one person does this piece, one person does this, one person does another thing. It can be done.
It can be. Well, we're so grateful for you sharing your story, walking us through this walk, and presenting this tool to us to delve into and to get more into, and just lifting up this whole topic of how do we minister to these kids that have been affected. And you beautifully
and they want it, Karen. They want it.
Yeah.
They want it. They just don't know what it really looks like.
Yeah.
They want people to be real, genuine. Don't come and pretend you're doing this for me when you're really only doing it to make yourself feel better. They want authenticity. They need a Sue Van Balen.
Well, we're grateful. We're very, very grateful for Sister Susan and in her many presentations. She's just like you. She's multifaceted. She's got many, many gifts, and we have learned a lot from her in the past, and we will in the future. And the same goes for you, Joyce. We thank you so much.
Please keep in touch.
But Joyce, thank you again. Blessings on your ministry. Get back out there. The women and the children, everyone needs you and your word and your ministry.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I put my email in the chat, so just send me an email and I'll get back with you.
Appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, I'm getting Sister Susan in the background saying, end us, Joyce, give us a little bit of Amazing Grace.
Oh man, I forgot. I thought you forgot about that.
Never.
Oh, let's see. I don't even, okay. Do I have a voice? Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Blessings. Thank you all. Thank you, Joyce. We're grateful.